If you're not aware, recently China passed a new legislation which forbids people from playing video games for more than 3 hours a day. And to my surprise and shock, I saw a lot of more authoritarian right wing individuals here in the West thinking that this is a great idea. So, in order to think that this is a great idea, you also need to think that it's a good thing that the government uses Face App and tracking software to connect the individual to the machine, to also know what you're doing when you're online. Like, you really want the nanny state. You're like a child wanting your nanny. But I'm not against the idea of talking about the issue of video game addiction, because that indeed is a problem. I mean, when I was a kid, I was spending 14, 15 hours playing video games, and I think that might have affected my grades. I think that's a little bit too much. But what I want to say is that there are parents, and there is the role of the parent to regulate this. Like, if you have a child, you can install various apps that allow the parent to monitor how much the kid is playing and what the kid is doing online. This should not be the job and the role of the government. But anyway, that's another conversation. What I am fascinated about, however, is the fact that Kotaku, a feminist publication, is bringing a journalist by the name of Cici Jiang to lecture people and to gaslight people about the reality of the ban, trying to make people to believe that China is not really bad. I don't know why they're doing it, honestly. I mean, I genuinely don't know why they think that Westerners need to believe that what China is doing is a good thing. I wonder if Kotaku is paid by the Chinese government at this point, because it's just the most bizarre stuff that I have ever seen. So this journalist is saying that, hey, look, China is a big place. It's got 720 million gamers. So you shouldn't make general statements. And I'm thinking, you're writing for Kotaku, right? Like, you realize Kotaku is making general statements about Americans and gamers on a daily basis. All gamers, all of them are misogynistic. Like, if you take a person that loves women and you put the controller in their hand, they become misogynistic because they start playing video games. That's according to Kotaku. Yeah, the gamers are facilitating rape culture. They kind of dropped that topic, but now gamers are facilitating racism and they're voting for Trump. So when you think about Kotaku, the last thing I think about is them not stereotyping, them not making broad statements. But for some reason, when people might be making broad statements about China, all of a sudden they need to bring on the Chinese liaison to make this article. I just, wow. What can I say? It's just like, questions are being asked. Answers are not being given. So what she's basically saying is that, look, this is not the Chinese government doing this. This is an arm of the Chinese government. Because you see, it's the National Press and Publication Administration, NPPA, which is doing it. So you should imagine that you're in an American company that wants to dump radioactive waste into a lake. It's like, hold on, lady, we're talking about video games, okay? Don't you think that if you need to give an example about dumping radioactive waste and comparing it to playing video games, you might be a little bit off? Like, maybe you don't really have a point if you need to go that far. But okay, so she's saying it's like an American company dumping radioactive waste into the lake, and then you have the Environmental Protection Agency saying you can't do that. So what she's saying, look, it's not the Chinese government, it's an arm of the Chinese government. And I'm like, oh, I see. You know, at least in the West, they have my private company argument can do whatever it wants. Apparently in China, they have it's the arm of the government that can do whatever it wants. Again, we're talking about China, right? So not a democratic state in the way that we understand it. Like, the CCP literally controls everything. They're all powerful, all knowing. They even track your kid when he is playing on the Xbox. So what on earth are we talking about? My God. She then goes on and she says, it's like, oh no, like, most people are worried about the MOBAs, because like that's what most of the Chinese people are playing. Like 90% of the boys, they are playing MOBAs, so it's the people playing MOBAs affected. It's like, yeah, but I don't see this law being tailored for MOBAs. It's a blanket law. Now, just because the law might affect the overwhelming people playing MOBAs, like Genshin Impact or whatnot, that's fine. I don't care. Like, what I'm saying is I'm seeing the government that is using apps in order to track kids, to associate the smartphone and the child, to compile all that information, which probably goes to the government. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. And then the fact that the government is worried about micromanaging stuff. Yeah, so it's kind of funny. Feminist publication. Oh yes, gender is a choice. Blah blah blah. But they're praising China, which recently says it doesn't want any more sissy boys, as an example on TV. Huh? What do you have to say about that, Sissy Yang? Does Kotaku even question you about it? I guarantee to you, if the state of Texas would say something like this, if DeSantis would have said in Florida, we don't want sissy boys on television, Sissy Young and the entire Kotaku team would have had an aneurysm. I just, maybe they're like decent people inside. I'm starting to wonder, the people working at Kotaku, I mean. Because when they're looking at other nations, even a nation as brutal and fascistic like China, they see the goodness in people. They see the goodness in humanity. It's like, well, it's not the government. It's the government arm that's doing it. We should give them a break. There's too many people. We can't use a broad brush. But when looking at America, racism, systemic. Did you notice that? Am I the only one who's noticing it? Kind of weird. And I'm looking at the people in the comment section, and it's so bizarre, because a lot of the people in the comment section, they're like, okay, look, I'm a gamer. I wouldn't want the US government to dictate just how much I can play. I wouldn't want Nancy Pelosi to have access to which computer I log on to. That's a little bit too much for me. And they're like trying to say, well, but like, how about such and such? And immediately it's like, oh, you're xenophobic. China number one. And they're like, bah, you're right. I was xenophobic. So sorry. Like, if you go into the comment section, you're going to find just so many people that are like this. It's just bizarre. And then you have, like, I fully admit I do not know much about Chinese culture or politics. Look at this shit. So you don't need to know anything about Chinese culture or politics to make an assessment that the government monitoring people on their computer is a bad thing. It's a violation of human rights. It's a violation of privacy. And the government isn't doing this because it cares about your safety. The government is doing things because it cares about its safety. So it wants to monitor people since early childhood all the way until the grave to make sure that the people don't get wrong thoughts that would be dangerous to the government. That's what it is about. Whenever the government talks about safety, yeah, it's about safety, just not your own. It's the government's safety. So you don't need to know anything about the Chinese culture or politics to figure out this is bad. It's not okay. To me, it comes across as scary just because of the simple thought that the government being able to just make blanket rules like that, right? So immediately, you're going to have people going like, no, you're wrong. See, we have this here. We have it with casinos. We have it with minors not being able to smoke. And it's like, yeah, but there's a difference. You don't need to have a tracing app on the minor. You don't need to have to invade the minor's privacy in order to ban the minor from a casino. You don't need to figure out what laptop and what mobile device the minor is using in order not to take him into a place where they're smoking. That's the difference. And even then, the law doesn't punish the minor, which, as I understand in China, if you play more than you're supposed to, you get lower credit score. The law is punishing the company. And we're not saying like, oh yes, like minors should be allowed 3 hours a day in the casino. It's just insane. It's ridiculous. Or the minor should be allowed like 2 cigarettes a day. We don't have laws like that. How can you even make the comparison? It's absolutely ridiculous. Maybe we should ask why gaming addiction is such a huge problem in China. Yeah, it would be nice if they covered these topics. Yeah, it would be nice. Because I know why I was suffering from gaming addiction when I was a kid. I wonder if it's a similar thing in China. Because everyone I knew that was suffering from a gaming addiction didn't have a perfect life back home. Most people were using gaming addiction as a way to escape from reality. So the problem was the reality. It wasn't the fact that they were playing video games. There were other issues. That was just the symptom. In my case, I just moved into a new city. I didn't have access to any new friends. I didn't know any new people. And I was using video games as an escapism. But it begs the question. Yeah, like that reader said. Like they should cover the topic on why gaming addiction is such a problem in China. Actually, I would love to know why it's a problem in the West as well. Because I don't think all the families are suffering from having kids with gaming addiction. I notice rich and wealthy family usually have this phenomenon happening less, at least in my circle of friends. I don't have a study, but I noticed like rich, wealthy people played video games far less than people that were a little bit more impoverished and coming from more dysfunctional families. Personal observation, okay? Just don't take this as a study. Just my personal experience. Maybe in other places of the world it's different. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comments section. Take care.